one.
Hello, Internet. Welcome to Discover RPG, where your wonderful hosts, Angela and Logan, chat about D&D and RPG stuff and things we are passionate about, or random things we like to talk about, or goofy stuff, all sorts of things. I started real strong there. I was real close to having a very locked in talk there. But hi, everybody. Welcome. I see people in chat. I see familiar, wonderful faces in chat. How are you today, Logan?
I'm good. How are you? I'm doing really well.
Doing all right. I am quite good, thank you. Representing.
Very good, yes.
Yes.
Loose as a squirrel.
So, today is January 30th. I don't know why I decided to say that, but it seemed like it's good for when I need to check when we recorded this.
Not the title or anything.
No. So, what have you been up to? Not that I don't know.
Well, we got notice from our landlord that we might need to move out in 6 months. So that's fun. So we're going to month. Isn't that fun?
Might is dumb. That's a dumb word.
Because I appreciate the heads up.
Yes,
I do.
Yes.
I appreciate that. But the parents that own the place, well, technically the kids own the place, but they said, of course, when we came in, that no way that the daughter's going to want to live in this house ever. She's going to school up in Canada, blah, 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 blah. Well, she's finishing up school in Canada, and if she gets her internship locally, which is her plan, then she's going to want to have the house. So it's like, okay. So to me, in my mind, when you tell me you might need to move out in 6 months, that means I'm leaving in 6 months one way or the other.
Sure.
It's like I'm not going to sit with that over my head. If I'm not in a lease, I'm going to find a place. So that's what so I am going to be watching a lot of Marie Kondo and learning how to purge everything in my life. No rules, no constitution.
That's why Tessa saw a house and went, that house is pretty. That makes sense now. I thought it was completely on the left. Okay, it was. She just
Tessa just says it all the time. So we're trying to decide where we want to move. We're looking at schools for Kendall. We're looking at friends.
Florida's beautiful this time of year.
No, it's not. It's wet and gross and sticky, and there's
It's cold and wet. Okay, get your facts straight.
And sticky. It's still sticky.
It's not sticky right now. It's cold.
It is. You've never seen me in Florida. And then of course we're still looking at moving down to
it is currently 49 degrees. You shut your mouth.
It's still humid as hell.
I'm planning on making my dog a sweater. It's that cold right now.
I'm a sweaty dog.
He just doesn't have enough fur. He's
also
like
looking
bald.
At possibly moving down into the Burbank area and being around all the amazing people down there. But we're not sure. We don't know what we're going to do yet. So that's kind of where we're at. We're looking.
Don't listen to Zach. Pennsylvania is not nice and quiet. It's terrible in the winter.
I don't want quiet.
It's cold and slushy. And don't try to lie to me, Zach. I've lived there.
I don't want snow.
Snow. It quote unquote snows in Pennsylvania. Where I lived, it was slush that was covered in exhaust. Like, it never got snowy.
Yeah, I am sure that I'm going to get a DM from my wife here soon about should not have shared all that. So, but anyway, that's what we're looking at. Hopefully, Grandma doesn't watch the shows.
Well, hopefully. My apartment complex right now, I'm hoping that they don't start hammering into my wall again, because they're completely ripping apart and rebuilding the outside of my apartment. I feel like it's going to be, you were worried I was going to DM you, so I'm doing this to freak you out.
That's exactly what it was. Yes. Yes. Pretty much. That's exactly what it was.
But they're completely remodeling the outside of my apartment complex, and I'm thinking, oh, this is going to be so pretty, because they're giving us screened in porches, we're going to have like a wrought iron gate instead of a wall, so the dog can see outside. It'll be great. It's really improving the quality of life for my dog. But there's always the chance that they're rebuilding they're redoing the whole outside because they want to up rent and they want to get new people to come in. So we're just keeping that in mind, that there's a good chance in a year that our rent's gonna like double.
Yeah.
Look at all the work we did. It's like, yeah, that's great. Can we get grandfathered in, please?
I had a buddy who went into a house, bought a townhome, and they were doing renovations. They're like, oh, there's a special assessment that's going to be coming on your home. It can be anywhere from $4,000 to $40,000 to repair the roofs. Well, guess how much it was? $40,000 per condo. Ridiculous. It just sucks. It's just ridiculous that these things can happen, but that's okay, especially in California when it was already a $400,000 house, I believe. Townhome attached to 3 other people.
I want to take the opportunity to snark back at Secondhand Samurai. I said it in chat, but hey, all the banter can't be playful. Some of the banter has to be life banter. You and I, not to completely segue out, but you and I were talking about some of our topics for today, I'm
scared of segues.
Right? I saw this amazing video where these 2 people were doing a Segway tour, and one of them just completely poof. It's like, how did you fall off?
If the Secret Service couldn't prevent the president from face planting on one, I certainly have no hope.
But you and I talked about a number of the topics for today. We went over them, and I'm actually very excited to get to them. So if you don't mind, I'd like to chat about the first thing on our list.
Fine, you want to get to there so quickly.
I do. I like some of these topics.
Why are you crying? What's crying? What are we?
I don't know.
Oh, we just got a piano too, so that, there's that.
Oh, yay, so moving.
We've been waiting for a piano forever, and yeah.
Well, no. See, this is perfect. You just put it on wheels, and then Tessa can just recreate that Vanessa Carlton video.
Oh, there we go.
She just plays it to the house. And you put a little hat on a skateboard chained to the back of it so people can throw money at her.
I don't know if it's every year or what, but there's a piano downtown here in Winters. It gets left outside, and people can walk up and play it. And I guess it gets tuned occasionally. And every year they hoist it up and drop it, and then somebody puts a new piano out there, and I'm just like, can I just have one? I'm like,
right?
We wanted one forever, but we got one. So
you can just tune them, right? Like, it's not broken.
Yeah, I don't know. Tessa can talk to them more about that. All right, let's get to these questions. That's what everyone's here for.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. Hello, Secondhand.
How about we go over them really quick so that we can give people a little bit of a preview of what we're going to do.
All right, I'm going to try to do this without looking at notes. Let me see here. As the DM rolls is talking about a house rule. We started this new kind of segment about bad house rules. We go out and we find the world's worst house rules, and we talk about them and how maybe they could actually be good. So we're going to talk a little bit about a special house rule there. Building blocks is a question that Fennec asked us. We're going to be talking about the structure and how we build campaigns. It'll probably turn into there's a lot of content there, so we'll probably turn into a segment. I has a flavor we've talked about before. It's about flavoring different things. It went over really well. I think people really liked us talking about that, so we've just started to pull out specifics. Today we'll be talking about I looked at my notes, but I didn't see anything. Prestidigitation and thaumaturgy, the two kind of just utility fun spells.
The arcane and nature utility spells.
And then don't play God. We'll probably do our ad break in there somewhere. Don't play God, play guide. We're going to talk about passive DMing and a comment I got from one of our guests on Countless Heroes. Funhouse rules. We're talking about critical hits.
Yes.
And some different versions. Turns out that we used a critical hit rule that I found out is the same rule that Chris Perkins used. I've never had a chance to watch Chris Perkins DM, so I didn't know. But we came up with it independently, and then he evidently had the same idea, and it makes sense. So woo!
But yeah, we're going to talk about ours. We're going to talk about
some other people's too.
Yeah, other critical rules.
Blast from the Past is a question brought to us by, I believe, Matthew Siebert, which we will be. He's the host for The Land Above, and we're going to be talking about the previous editions of D&D and what we liked about them that we might incorporate or bring over. Just what was good in general. And then Power Spike. Sorry.
Specifically, Logan's going to talk about the previous editions because I have very little to no experience with them. I will add little. I'll be the peanut gallery. I will comment as he goes through his opinions.
You'll have a lot to say. And then Power Spike, we talk about the imbalance of characters and how we deal with that. The idea that at high levels, wizards can basically outdamage any party, and at 6th level, rogues can sneak around with a +30 sneak. And we'll just have some fun along the way. So let's go ahead.
Angela will be grumpy.
It's a really good lineup today.
And Angela will be only half seriously grumpy about barbarians.
About barbarian versus paladin.
Yes.
Because just last night that came up.
Just last night, that's all.
Good lineup today. So let's go ahead and get started. So let's talk about
the dance party. And the dance party.
Yeah.
We do the dance party before you all turn on the camera, so we're fine.
So as the DM rolls, we always like to start off with something a little silly, a little goofy. And I looked up, I just looked up world's worst house rules for D&D or something like that. And I always get some amazing
And you went
results.
to Reddit, clearly. That's where you ended up.
I'm pretty sure I did. It's either Reddit or there's a particular blog post, or it's the last one was I'm trying to remember the other place we get a lot of stuff. It's the playground one. I can't remember the name of it. D&D playground or something like that. Somebody will know what I'm talking about. So this house rule is one I have seen several times. Usually it's in the 3.5 or Pathfinder perception check area. That's where most people might be familiar with this. But it's the idea that the DM rolls dice for the player. It's the player's roll, but the DM is going to roll it usually in secret and kind of keep that information secret to them. So they won't know if they succeeded or failed when you tell him, no, you don't see anything on that wall, etc. While I'm generally uncomfortable making any rolls for the players. I don't like that. I don't think they trust that it's going to be legitimate. I can see, at least in that situation, the reason why people do that. Even though I don't agree with it. I think that if you're doing a role-playing game, people need to understand there's going to be information that that your characters don't know. I think you need to play it out correctly, and you should feel free to call them on that information if they are acting, like the worst example, in my opinion, in this is the idea that they roll poorly and they go, well, I don't trust myself, and they go, I want to check again. And in those situations, I say, okay, you can roll again with disadvantage, or you can roll again at a penalty in the previous systems. It becomes frustrating because it seems to happen with certain players quite a lot. I just let it go. I've already got a built-in negative penalty. Sometimes they'll find it, sometimes they won't. Some people just second-guess themselves. And often what I'll do is later on, when they find something, I'll be like, well, you know what? But you don't usually trust yourself. So I want you to roll again at a disadvantage. And the second time they'll miss it, and then they have no idea what to do at that point. Because they sit there and they go, I'm not supposed to, I always go with my second, I'm not sure if I trust myself. And it confuses them a little bit, knowing that I'm going to pull that on them either way. And either it stops or we have a bit of fun with it. So you had an example.
I did. It's not something that I'm 100%. This is based purely on sort of a first impression that I had. But Dan Harmon has the creator of Community, has a D&D show that he was running. I think Amazon was showing it. And he has a DM. He's not the DM. He's just a player in it. And the whole premise is that they're goofing off. They have a bunch of comedians on, and then they animate clips of it, so it's them talking and then there's sort of like this goofy cartoon over what's going on.
Sure.
But it seemed to me that at least in several episodes, if not all the episodes, the guests are comedians that come in and play and very likely don't know anything about how to play D&D. They're just there to hang out with Dan Harmon and to goof off and improv, and the DM rolls everything, and then after they've told him, I want to do this, and he goes, okay, and he rolls, he then dictates what happens based on the rolls. That was an example for me that felt like, oh, okay, so there are people who want to play D&D with you, but don't know how, and you're focusing on it being an entertaining show for the audience, so you're not going to bog the players down in learning a system they don't know. So you're giving them the flavor of a cooperative storytelling experience, but you're not bogging them down in damage rolls and hit rolls and like skill checks. They're just telling you what they want to do, and you do all the math. if that is something we've talked before about DMs having like maybe taking some things off your plate, having the players do things for you to keep you focused on the things you need to be focused on. But if you just want to play D&D by yourself and have other people telling you why you're rolling, that's legit. Like, again, no wrong way to play. But that is an example that I was like, oh, okay, the DM rolling for everything makes sense in that situation, because that is how the players want to play. They want to just be the role players, they want to add the flavor, and they want the DM to crunch the numbers for them. I mean, that's fine. I think, like I said, that's the one counterexample of an actually good
acceptable
reason to do that system.
Reasonable reason. I agree. There was the other side of this is I have seen people that are taking that to an extreme where they will roll pretty much anytime that a player will be able to act on information and not necessarily know the result of their actions will probably change. They will roll that behind the scenes. So insight checks, perception checks, persuasion, intimidation, because you always think you're being intimidating. You always think you're being persuasive. And I think that just comes down to understanding the game, understanding the level of the players you're dealing with. But I don't think it's ever acceptable to do that, because part of the game is learning how to deal with that. At least acceptable in my mind. There are games, well, there's one acceptable way to do it. If you talked about it in session 0 and everybody agreed to it, there's no wrong way to play D&D. So as long as everyone's on the same page, you don't just spring it on them, and you're open to the idea that maybe at some point that they're going to want that to change. They're going to want to roll their own dice, but rolling dice is part of the fun, and rolling dice in role play is a big part of the fun as well. Now, that being said, I often limit role-playing dice rolls because I want to stick with the role-playing. I use the 5th edition passive rules for a lot of different things. In my head, people have a passive persuasion, a passive intimidation. I just add 10 to whatever their stat is. I look at that and I go, is that enough to persuade this guy? Yes, it is. So I don't even tell them that they are persuading that guy. They just succeed. It just kind of happens. The downside to that is they don't notice. Sometimes they want to roll those dice. Like we have a player right now, plus 13 to persuasion. It's like, I really want to roll that die. I'm like, but there's no situation in which you wouldn't already succeed. Why give yourself a chance for failure? Just because I understand you want to see the number. You're welcome anytime you want to see how persuasive you're being is to sit and roll the die. But that nat 1 comes up and you're going to be upset. And I don't agree that 5% of the time, all the time, people are going to fail. I just don't agree with that.
It happens more often than I was expecting, that occasionally someone will roll shitty and then be like, but my passive is this. It's like,
yes,
Logan could have just given you the passive if you hadn't rolled.
And the point of that is I've been trying to be very careful about when somebody is actively doing something versus when they're passively doing something. If someone is just passively talking to someone, and I'm like, well, I would probably call for a persuasion check right now, they're passively doing it. If someone is like going in with the intent of, I've got to convince this guy to do this thing, that's a little different. I'll probably have them actively roll. I think that's what it comes down to. But also, one of the things I'm trying to get away from, and I'm trying to find a nice way to say this in game, because we've talked about it a lot, I keep screwing it up and being rude about it, is this idea that I want people to stop asking me for dice rolls. I want us to, I don't want my players to ask me, do I have, can I, I'd like to make an insight check, or I want to make a perception check. It's like, that's not role playing. What are you doing? And then when I ask the players that, they come up with some amazing things. Because usually it's like, I want to know if he's lying. And it's like, no, that's what I've got in the past. But now,
why do you want to know he's lying? What about you makes you think he's lying?
Well, and what about him? What about this character do you think could be different? And when you start to ask questions like that, they come up with these incredible answers. I think might have been Zach that came up with one, and then
no, I remember
one the other day.
I had one. Loki had a really good one, where Loki was looking for a very specific element of the lie. He said that when a person we were talking about or a person we were talking to was giving us information about like an old, I'm going to probably mess up the details just for the sake of the story. Looking for information about an old one, we were talking to a character, and she was giving us this information because she used to be associated somehow with the cult of this old one. And Loki said, I want to make sure that the warnings that she is giving us come from a place of fear and not of a place of veneration or adoration for this thing. I want to know if she's like, oh, it's a great monster and it's going to eat the world, or it's a great monster and it is going to eat the world. Like, that sort of vibe.
It's a perfect use of insight, because we're trying to gain insight into their motive behind what they're saying. Not is she lying about this monster eating the world? Probably not. She probably truly believes that. And that used to be my go-to answer, but since I saw just one little clip of Matt Mercer doing the same thing, saying, somebody said, "Oh, I'd like to roll an insight check," and he goes, "I'm sorry, I don't recognize insight checks. What is it your character's doing?" or something like that. And of course, I try to say that in my games, and I come across as rude, and I get a lot of people yelling at me. But that's okay. They should have yelled. There's a better way to do it.
My pitch for doing that, if you want to hear my pitch for how to like put the kibosh on insight checks. Honestly, you've done it before. It's just remembering to do it. That when someone goes, I want to make an insight check, you say, talk me through what your character's thinking right now. What are they worried about when they're doing this check on insight? What are they specifically seeking?
Sorry. The problem with not putting out there the idea that insight checks need to stop each time is that then they don't stop. People just assume that's the process. You say, I want to roll insight. Fair. I say, Fair. How do you want to go through that? And that's where I'm trying to get to, is to nicely remind in game, but it is hard to remember when you've got so much going on. It's something you've talked about several times, but it's ingrained in us to look at our character sheets sometimes and go, this is my stats. This is what I want to do. And I probably would screw up playing more often than any of my players. My players are all amazing, incredible people. They're so much better at role-playing than I am. I may be good at DMing, but they're so much better at role-playing than I am and being good players. I don't play a lot because I'm a horrible player. I can do a one-shot probably, but a campaign, I have to struggle with, and I recognize that. That's why I don't play in a lot of campaigns. Aww. That, and I have zero time.
I have a proposal for one thing I'm going to do. Yeah, I know. Still got a proposal. Don't derail me. One, I'm going to highlight this section and just post it in our
show was.
I'm going to highlight the things you just said, like the last 5 minutes, and just put it up on our campaign Discord. Be like, hey guys, watch this. Okay. Alternatively, we could start producing very short 30-second videos. We could put them on Discover RPG, but they could be, letters to our players and their house rules, the home rules, the things that we want them to remember to do, and we can put them up on the Discord, and we can also they'll be around so that if somebody wants to use them as examples, they can use those clips, go, I really like the rule they're trying to impress upon their players. Guys, just watch this. And this is what I want to impart. So if we wanted to do that, little house rule videos, very, very short stuff that wouldn't take much time to edit, and one of us in front of a camera explaining one of the rules. We absolutely should
do that. Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, that was originally what the idea of 20-sided DM, which became DRPG with you, was to do these little short videos on that type of thing. I do want to say real quick, hold on a second. April, if you want to play D&D, I would be glad to DM. I'd be very happy and proud to DM for you your first time. You pick 2 or 3 of the countless heroes, and
no pressure.
We'll put a group together. No, seriously, no pressure, no judgment. Private game. I'd be glad to do that for you if you're interested. Just let me know.
And Zach's done a wonderful job running games on on our public Discord server for our viewers and stuff. I know it's going to be a when you feel up to it, so don't feel pressured.
Yeah, don't feel pressured at all. Anytime. The
honestly,
Zach does an amazing job with that as well.
Well, I was going to say, I don't know if Zach has any problem with it. If he does, let me know. But Zach, do you have any problem with people just sort of like auditing D&D games,
Yeah,
just like
you
hanging
can
out.
come in and listen and watch.
Yeah, that's a good way of maybe getting into it. Is just listening to some of the other random people in the game or in the server. Door is always open.
All right.
Arms are always open for you, April.
Probably
Okay,
didn't
yeah,
have to
Zach's
call that out.
fine. He said listeners. Jay plays Stardew Valley while he's listening.
Stardew Valley.
Aw, that's so relaxing. I mean, Jay, I'll be honest. I have a campaign, and we're going to talk about this when we get into the building blocks segment, which is we really went off the rails. We're in prime form right now, Logan. Although we've been talking about not DM rolling, but I have a campaign in my soul right now that I'm planning on developing that is essentially Stardew Valley. It's that vibe.
I have no idea what that is.
It's like Minecraft, but it's like Farmville mixed with Minecraft and Happy and Animal Crossing. It's like those mixed together. It's like a Happy you farm things and you build a little farm in your town and you hang out with people. It's fun.
Awesome.
Griffin McElroy fucking loves that game.
I do that in Rust, but then I usually have to shoot those people. All right, so let's move on to building.
Logan, take this as the biggest compliment that Countless Heroes is
I
Zach's
take it as a
Stardew
compliment.
Valley. Griffin fucking loves Stardew Valley. Or no, he loves Animal Crossing. Never mind. All right, so yeah, next segment. Thank you so much to Fennec for pitching this idea. I think it's very excellent, and we will probably expand it into more than one segment. So building blocks is going to be a segment where we talk about building your campaign from the ground up. How do you start? What do you focus on? How to give yourself the support structure that you need as a DM. Everyone's got different DM styles and different needs in terms of prep, but what are some of the things that you can do to give yourself that little let's say that little vault of DM information so that you're ready to run something for your players?
So before I start a campaign, usually when I start thinking about campaigns and things, my immediate mind goes to world building, because to me a campaign is nothing without the world it's set in. So I have to decide on what world it's going to be in, and usually something will spark an idea for a campaign, like an overarching theme or something. But more often than not, what I do is I just kind of start to gather the players and find out what they want to do. What the players are interested in is a big factor in what I end up doing in the long run, which was a hard lesson for me. And I learned it back in 3.5 when I sat down with my players and pulled out a new module. And we're going to talk a little bit about this later. But this new module, when I owned my game store, was called Midnight. And Midnight is something I've always wanted to do. And I kind of did a mini version of that here, a micro version of that in our city here. But it is basically the world, the world of Tolkien if Sauron had won, and what that world would be like to have heroes growing up in that world, and being completely shunned, being the type of people that are told not to rock the boat, that you'll bring down hellfire if you step out of line, and trying to build your way up and succeed and eventually destroy the BBEG in that world to eventually try to defeat Sauron after he's gained full power. So it's just an amazing concept, but none of my players were interested. Like, nope, not interested at all. And it was like, oh, okay, I just read all that for nothing, and I'd put it aside and move on and did what my players wanted to do. So that's usually where my campaigns my ideas originally spark, is sitting down and finding out what the players want. Now, that being said, if I'm going into any campaign, the first thing I want to think about is what makes it unique, what makes it different than any others. And it doesn't have to be something plot related. Countless Heroes was unique and different because it was West Marches. And West Marches is a unique type of campaign that can add a lot of different things, and it has its cons as well.
So I do very much like the idea of starting on a big question, if that is how your brain works. What is the world that your game is taking place in? What kind of... I think sometimes thinking about it a little bit like almost any other kind of fiction media, I think sometimes it helps to determine the genre you want to exist in. Or genres, multiple. If, just to pull an example of just since somebody is currently world building, Kim, one of our creators who's in Countless Heroes, is currently planning an Eberron campaign with an all-female cast, and she had basically given us an elevator pitch of the game is going to be an all-female sort of adventure pulpy noir story. She called it like Indiana Jones meets Charlie's Angels. That's sort of the vibe she was going for. Now, if you start with a genre, that sometimes can give you a lot of room to suddenly spread out in that space. If you're familiar with the tropes of that genre, you can start building things like that. All right, so if somebody's playing an adventure noir game, what are they expecting to find? Okay, there's going to be, femme fatales and morally gray villains, like things like that. You could start building characters or building organizations. You can start building the infrastructure of that world based on the fact that you're aware of certain themes and motifs of that genre. So I think starting with like, what's the premise of my world, or what is the flavor of the world I want to run. For my own work, I'm working right now, and I'm probably going to be bogarting a lot of the this conversation as we go on with it. With this is what I'm doing right now, because I'm literally building a campaign right now. That my gentle D&D campaign that I'm working on, I'm building a world, or I'm building a game in which combat's going to be pretty light. There's not going to be a ton of combat in this game. I'm trying to come up with alternate ways of engaging my players with skills and with challenges that are not necessarily just, here's a monster, go kill it. And obviously we do that a lot in Countless Heroes. But Countless Heroes is also very grounded in a gritty's not the right word, but it is very grounded in consequences and the darkness in people and the moral ambiguity that comes from...
It's not traditional fantasy adventure.
Right. And I'm not...
dark fantasy adventure.
Yeah, and I'm not really leaning towards traditional fantasy either. I think one of the things I'm going to do for the players is I'm going to make I'm going to take a cue from Fiasco, another role-playing game, and give the players a series of, watch these things. These are my cultural touchstones for my game. If you want to get a vibe for what I'm kind of going for here are the shows that I would say, shows or movies that are heavily influencing the tone that I'm trying to do, so that we're all on the same page. So I'm playing with anything from a little bit of Adventure Time to there's a few cartoons out now. Most of them are cartoons, but Hilda on Netflix is a really big touchstone that I'm working with. The idea of there's danger and supernatural, but most things are reasonable. Most people are very reasonable. You can talk, you can solve things through creative problem solving and talking things out, and nobody's inherently evil. There are moral questions, but most people are just trying to do what they think is right, and that's where the conflict might come from, is just, well, we just need to figure out a compromise. So there's this, like I said, there's this sort of gentle tone to what I'm going for, but then like a whimsy and playful thing. So I've got some cultural touchstones that I'm going to work with when I'm building my world to fit that tone I'm trying to achieve. So I think tone and genre is a good starting point for me.
It's a great place to start. It's usually the most of what I have when I start, and sometimes the game organically grows away from it, and that's okay because it
Sure.
feels natural. Um, the first arc of this campaign was very different than the feel now, I think, of Countless Heroes, of my campaign. I think it was just a very different kind of feel to it. It was much more hopelessness and much more dark. Um, the uh, Even though it is still pretty dark right now, it's just not as bleak, I guess.
Oh, you mean the Devourers aren't the big bads? Just wait. Like, the trials start after the Devourers. I was like, great. That's a great thing to look forward to.
Yeah, isn't it? But also for me, a lot of my campaign planning is done during the campaign. I unfortunately am not one of those that does a lot of prep work beforehand. I have no idea where the players are going to go or what they're going to want to do. I like giving, my way of describing role-playing games to people is, have you ever been in a video game and you've got a gun and you know that there's a baddie right on the other side of that wall and you just want to blow the hell out of that wall and just walk right through? In role-playing, you can do anything you want in role-playing. That's why I like role-playing over video games for the most part. That, to me, that freedom is very important, and I want to make sure the players feel as much of that. Notice I said feel, not have, but feel as much of that as possible. So I want the players to feel like every thing they do is a free choice. Even sometimes, not always, but sometimes it's not. There's very little freedom in their choices. The last night the name of the episode was Triple Threat. So they knew something was coming. I just didn't know where it was going to happen yet. I had 3 or 4 different ideas. They decided to go and do one particular thing, so it happened on the way there. That encounter was going to happen, and part of why it was going to happen is because the creatures that they were facing have the ability to use divination and things like that to know where to meet up with the players. So it doesn't matter where I put them. The fact is they knew that that was the right place to be. So it unfortunately just works out that way sometimes. But for the most part, they have complete freedom. They can go and do anything they want. They can go and work on anything they want. And in those moments, even where they went last night, the end result being, yes, there was a combat. It was the same combat no matter where they were going to be, but at least it made sense. But the idea is that they still got to go and finish the thing they wanted to finish. So that freedom is important to me. So I don't know where they're going to go. So I don't plan beyond that. Right now, there are 3 different locations outside of the city. The next arc is going to be somewhere away from Cinderhaven. Where? I still don't know. It's leaning towards this island that several of the people came from, Lamina Island. But there's also this major city now that we're in spring. There's this major ancient Goliath city that they could go to, which appeals to several of the players. And I don't know if they're going to get to both in this campaign. And then there was a third option. I can't remember what it was. You guys could have dismissed that one pretty early, but there's the war to the north, and you can go in it and you can go and help out the war to the north. So yes, there's a lot of different things going on, and they're going to be gone for a while. So who knows what's going to change here while they're gone? So I don't know what's going to happen. So I have to kind of be a little bit ready for all of them, and then plan out. And some DMs will be like, well, you just have everything planned. I don't have time for that. I don't have time to plan out all of Lamina Island and all of wherever and all of this district, these ancient ruins, which is basically a large civilization. It wasn't just one city worth of buildings and structures. You just don't have time to plan it all out. Especially if you're somebody like me who's playing 20 hours a week. A lot of it has to happen on the fly, and that's how I do most of mine. That is not the right way. It's not even a good way, but it's the way I do it.
God, now I have so many things I have to talk to you about the campaign. Like DM shit of like, if we're leaving town, I have like plans I need to make.
All right, shall we move on?
Yeah. I has a flavor.
So if you have any other questions about campaign building, specifically about campaign building, let us know. You can do it here. You can tag us if you're on YouTube. You can tag us in the comments, or you can tag us over on on Twitter, we'd be glad to take that. We are at Devious Muppet or at Darling Gypsum, or you can add us at Discover RPG Show.
Discover RPG Show. Yep. I personally think that we should continue working on building blocks. I think there are plenty of other aspects of starting.
Yeah, we just need to narrow it down a little bit and start talking about specifics. And if you have a specific you'd like to have on the list, just let us know.
Yeah. Heck yeah.
Awesome. What's next?
I has a flavor.
Yes, but what's the next topic?
I want to talk about... So you have... so there are 3... I know you only mentioned 2 in the plan, Logan, but there are 3 abilities, 3 spells that are the arcane, the arcane, the nature, and the divine versions of sort of a baseline, little tiny magic effects that you can have.
I think 2 of them are arcane and one's more druidic. Because one's a druid only.
Thaumaturgy's only cleric. I just checked. Some
really?
Classes get...
I didn't realize that.
Tieflings get thaumaturgy, but they're the only ones that get thaumaturgy outside of...
Okay.
Yeah. So it's thaumaturgy is the cleric spell, prestidigitation is the arcane spell, and druidcraft is the more nature-based.
That only druids get.
That only druids get. Or, like, I think... I want to say like furbolgs, and maybe there's another race that gets it, like wood elves might get it. But anyway, it's very linked to the natural world and nature magic. Rangers might also get access to it. But the idea being that even though they have descriptors, it's a basic little spell effects that are flavored to those particular styles of magic. They're little sensory effects that you can do. Each of the spells does have a list of, you can pick one of the following effects. And some of them are pretty robust. Like, there's a lot of stuff you can do. They keep them vague so that you can sort of expand on them. But Logan wanted to talk about the idea of flavoring these 3 spells. And what did you mean by flavoring these 3 spells?
Well, we've talked a lot about changing the flavor of spells by allowing players to kind of come up with their own interpretations of what they look like. We talked a lot about spiritual weapon being one of them, allowing people to choose some really off-the-wall crazy ideas for that, including a dragon that breathes fire as the head of the weapon. And all sorts of things. So I thought about this one with just some ideas that people, what could people do? And do we have any examples of how people could reflavor the different effects in these spells? That was my main thing.
There is a comment that I where was it? The animated spell book, the 5e animated spell book on YouTube. He did a video about prestidigitation and how cool prestidigitation was. He made a comment about something that you technically can do, rules as written, in prestidigitation. It depends on your DM's ruling. But it says you can put a symbol on a surface. It doesn't indicate size. It just says you where is it? You make a color. Okay, it says you make a color, a small mark, or a symbol appear on an object. It does not say a small symbol appear on an object for an hour. So theoretically, you could put like a big ass symbol on the side of a building, and there's nothing that distinctly says you can't do that. That might be stretching the bounds of it. I personally like to say that the examples for what you can do with these spells all work within reason. And the reason is it's a cantrip. You're not allowed to do gigantic things with it.
Large graffiti, but how long does that last?
It lasts for an hour.
Oh, geez. That's a kind of annoying graffiti that you could do with different symbols. But the problem is the symbol is just a symbol, but until it's not.
Dun, dun, dun. I mean, we were dealing with a whole revolution. I mean, a symbol on a wall for an hour could be very impactful. But so yeah, I'm a big fan of Druidcraft is the one that really speaks to me when it comes to this like flavoring idea, that Druidcraft has very specific rules. I keep pulling everything up just so I have the list in front of me. So they talk about the idea. Okay, so literally the first thing on Druidcraft just says you create a tiny, harmless sensory effect. It talks about weather, but a lot of them are harmless sensory effects. So a flower, that's harmless. Like this idea of just you could let little things grow. I like the idea of letting it be a catch-all for very small, very not very effective versions of other spells that druids can do. Sure. Very small stuff that's like some people are like, oh well, I'd like to dig a trench. Well, that's not quite what this
that's
is.
A little beyond the idea there, but
yeah. Anything from, I mean, the fact that it says you can make flowers and seed pods open, like basically anytime you want to grow something, I would probably allow a small amount of growth to happen with a Druidcraft. It probably wouldn't be like, all right, so it's instantaneous, I take an action, so every 6 seconds I slowly plant seeds. If you want to be like a farmer, sure, that's how you plant things, but it's going to take you hours and hours and hours and hours to do it because it's the same as if you were hand planting. You're just putting your effort somewhere else.
And people take that to an extreme in the games, and I don't mind that. Like a lot of people say, oh, I just create a flower. It doesn't say you can create a flower at all. It doesn't say you can create anything from nothing. It says that you can make a flower blossom bloom or a seed pod open. You can't just out of nowhere create music. And that's a little bit of a reflavor. I don't mind that.
But that's why I would almost say if the druid wants to be making flowers, I think the druid should have just in their pack, just let them have flower seeds, but establish with them. You've got to have the seeds to be able to do that. Yeah. So if you collect seeds, yeah, sure. Pull some out of your hand, make them grow.
Exactly. Another thing that I have that I really like the idea of I came up with was like I don't know why you'd want to do this. I think it'd be kind of fun to do using Druidcraft as you're running through a forest or something, and every footstep you get little tiny growth of the underbrush just as your foot's just hit. Granted, you don't always want to show off where you've been, but I think it's a cool little thing that's like, okay, every step I take, it just this little burst of life coming after my feet. I would completely allow that. So I guess this isn't just so much reflavoring the way that the spells look, but how you could use them. I think that works for both in this. But I like that one a lot.
One thing that I've been meaning to talk to you about Shenanigans, our active play podcast. It's we're working on the second campaign arc right now. My character, Adelaide, is she's an arcane archer. So because she was an arcane archer, she got to pick between having prestidigitation and druidcraft. There's an example of a non-druid class that gets to have access to that. Mm-hmm. It just depends on what flavor of archery. Like, are you an elvish archer in the woods, or are you a soldier archer? That kind of thing. But because she took prestidigitation, I wanted to talk to you about the idea that prestidigitation is one of the things that she now gets to, like, I'd love for her to just be able to style her hair with it. Like, it's a simple little effect. It's not going to impact anything. It's just the idea that she can smooth out her hair. She's just trying to be able to style her hair without having to use product. That kind of thing. I like that idea of prestidigitation has specific rules about what can be cleaned or not. And I'm not as hung up about that. As from a DM perspective, I don't mind if someone wants to say clean up a little blood. I'm usually fine with that, but there are specific things it's allowed to do, like what counts as soiled. I think that from a perspective of little tiny arcane magics, cleanliness can be part of that. I feel like that's a perfectly legitimate, just a personal grooming aspect of. I'd allow that personally.
I look at it this way. Could I put it in a washing machine and would it come out if I came out of the dryer? That is how I look at what prestidigitation can do. Prestidigitation for me is more of a let's get off the sweat, let's get off the top layer of dirt, let's take a quick shower, let's change our clothes. But the problem is those old clothes, they're still going to have, you're running them through the wash. If it was hit with blood, that stains. It's instant. If it's hit with, blackberry jam, it's stained. You can't get that off because those things will actually change, stain the fibers of your clothing. That's just how I run it. It's not right or wrong. The way the Angela does it is fine. Except when you're dealing, for me, in my games, it is difficult because if you're dealing with something like an intrigue where blood is on the clothing, it becomes difficult if blood can just so easily be removed from clothing.
Sure, that makes sense. That's fair.
That's the only reason why I hesitate with allowing it to work on blood and things like that.
Okay, sure.
So like thaumaturgy, one of the things I let people do is they can do some voice modulation with thaumaturgy. I don't have any problems if they want to play around with that a little bit, as long as they're not trying to use it to deceive. If they just want to sound goofy or robotic or whatever, I have no problems with that. Changing the color of flames, I love that. That's a great one. There's I don't know how far I would allow that to go, but like if somebody came to me and says, well, I want it to be multicolored flames, I'm sure you could absolutely do. I think rainbow colors or two or three tones, because fire itself already is multiple tones of colors.
A cleric whose god's name is Alexa. Alexa, make flames blue.
Make flames blue.
Okay, so I'm playing around with a very rules light version of D&D 5e right now, and reading the actual flavor description of these 3 spells is actually more interesting. I realize I haven't internalized what those little explanation flavor sentences are. So besides the list of things you can do, a rule of thumb for me as a DM, if you were trying to give a little bit more freedom to your players of operating outside of the rules as written, what's on the list for these spells, looking at the tone of the flavor sentence. So the examples here are Druidcraft says, you whispering to the spirits of nature, you create one of the following effects. So this idea of, if you're emphasizing with your druid player or your player who has the spell that this is a small moment of you connecting with nature. It is not a big effect. It is you are peeling back the layer between nature and humanity, and you are asking it to do something very small for you. So if you're keeping that tone, I think that maybe helps control like power creep in your druid crafting. Prestidigitation describes it as a spell that is a minor magical trick that novice spellcasters use for practice. So thinking about little things that a person in a magic school might try to do. Something like,
you could do around people harmlessly, even if you screwed it up.
Yeah. Practice spells. That sort of thing. So I think that's a good rule of thumb of, all right, this is the type of magic that can be done with this spell. So you can think outside the box, but just remember, would a student be doing this? Would a average student, not like overachiever trying to become a lich kind of student. And then thaumaturgy describes it as, you manifest a minor wonder, a sign of supernatural power. So you're trying to, whether it's divine or hellish, you're trying to express the wondrous power of the divine energy that you're connected to. So again, you're sort of peeling back the curtain a little bit and expressing that you have a connection with some sort of divine energy, and that is how that expresses, or that's how it manifests. But it's small. You are a cleric, someone's questioning you, and you're trying to show that you have connection to some sort of divine energy.
Look at, if you happen to have been one of the people that watch Harry Potter, look at the spells or Reddit. Look at the spells they do in classes. making a feather float, or just a little tiny little bitty spells they do in the first couple of years to start learning how to start to control the larger powers. That's what they're doing with prestidigitation. You just then know them forever because it's just kind of part of second nature. It's just who you are. You take it with you.
I just had a really good example of thaumaturgy.
Go for it.
Lord of the Rings, the scene where Frodo and Gandalf are in the house or in the Hobbit hole, and the room gets dark, and Gandalf gets a little intimidating, and his voice seems to get like in his head.
The ground shakes a little bit.
Yeah, that's a really good example of I'm showing you an ounce of the power that I have access to. You're showing restraint, but you're making yourself feel intimidating, or you're making it clear that you have connection to something greater than you.
I mean, we could talk about Gandalf's power level a lot.
I'm just talking in the context.
An ounce might be a little bit generous of the rest of his abilities. But no, I love that one. And that goes to the other side of this topic about flavoring, is how to use them mechanically with that flavor. And one of the ways that I love, and I'm very appreciative because I would allow my players to do this, I think that prestidigitation and these minor spells are an excellent way to use the help action from a distance.
Heck yeah.
Showering somebody's face with sparks is distracting to me. That to me is going to give advantage to the next person that hits that target. Giving the help action by using these from 30 feet away, or 10 feet away with prestidigitation. I don't think that's an unreasonable use of that, to be able to be at a distance and still be able to use the help action if you have nothing else you can do. The help action is such a minor thing overall. The other thing is using the shaking ground or several of the other abilities to enhance intimidate on yourself or others. I would absolutely easily give advantage if somebody was trying to intimidate someone and said, hey, I'm going to use thaumaturgy and I'm going to shake the ground. So while they're sitting there and screaming at this guy, the whole ground underneath this person shakes. It's like, well, yeah, okay, you have advantage. Congratulations.
I'm sure
it's somebody's just the help action, but they're using these abilities.
I'm sure somebody has mentioned this before, but thaumaturgy only has a verbal component too. It allows you, from an intimidation standpoint, or from just you're trying to affect yourself. You're trying to make yourself seem different. The fact that there's only a verbal component, it doesn't feel like you're casting a spell. It feels like that power is just coming from you. I think that is a neat little bit of detail, that particular spell does not require you to have your hands waving around in arcane glyphs or some sort of druidic pattern. That it just feels like, oh, that person's fucking bad news because all they're doing is speaking, even if you're speaking in tongues or something to emit that spell. Fuck. I just suddenly apparently really bought myself into how cool thaumaturgy can be.
Yes, I agree completely.
Oh, that's a good call. Jay just mentioned that thaumaturgy, the throwing windows and doors open, you could check to see if something's locked from a distance. That's actually an interesting way to do that. I mean, it's not subtle, but it gets the job done. Yeah, I'm more and more, especially with the way that I'm going to have to run this gentle D&D campaign, I'm more and more really getting into the smaller abilities. These simple flavor spells can really do a lot. And the prestidigitation having a 10-foot radius, that reinforces the idea that it's close-up magic, basically. It's not something you're throwing out there. It's something you're just sort of you're doing in a small radius, because you're not good at magic yet. If you were learning these things, these were the small things, the little tricks.
Very cool.
That's a fun one.
Should we do an ad break?
Yeah, sure. I'm looking forward to turning that one into a conversation, a video conversation.
Yes, I think this would be good. We should start our ad break by saying, Alexa, play Rick Astley's Never Gonna Give You Up.
Don't do that.
Oh, no?
Don't do that. I can only take so many memes in one moment. All right, so our ad break. You want to start, or do you want me to do it?
You go ahead and start. I want to watch and see if Jay's Alexa turned on. It worked.
Awesome. Oh my
Yet
God.
another reason not to have those things in your home.
So fuck people who SWAT. You really should stealth Alexa snuff people. That's way funnier.
I think that's an actual practical joke that doesn't hurt anyone.
Yeah. Well, it hurts Jay in a very deep place, I'm sure.
Deep place, yes.
Okay, so we have partners and sponsors that we very much appreciate, and our sponsor is Die Hard Dice. We are incredibly grateful to them. I just finished yesterday reading a little thing that I had written for Die Hard Dice for one of our new little videos we're going to make. They are a creator. They're a dice vendor. They make amazing polymer dice, but they also make really, really cool custom designed in-house metal dice that are super duper pretty. They're very substantial. I very much enjoy them, and you should check them out. And because y'all are so cool, we're gonna give you a super secret code. It's not that secret, but if you use DRPG on dieharddice.com, you can get 15% off your first or next order. There are some really, really pretty dice out there, you guys. Like things that came out after we got our tester dice, and I'm like, damn it, I didn't have a chance to pick these. But yeah, we Todd and the crew are amazing over at Die Hard, and we're really excited to get to work with them. We're going to be putting out very soon. This week, we're going to have a video out on their blog that is going to be the start of our smaller short form video series that takes some of these longer conversations and turns them into short little digestible chunks. Our first topic is one of our original topics about how to flavor your world building descriptions by talking about languages and describing languages.
Yes.
So that's going to be our first video. We're very excited about it.
And those are just little bite-sized versions. They're not the full discussion. They don't even go into all the nuances. There are several other videos out there. There are original discussions. The idea is we just wanted little bite-sized things for people who are looking for quick answers. And we're going to do reviews like that and things, or ideas. And we're just going to kind of pop them out there because there's not a lot of short content out there that answer these questions.
Yeah, keeping it under 10 minutes. Looking for like 5-minute videos or less.
Under 5 minutes would be nice, but the longer ones with both, well, 5 minutes per person. If we're both in them, then it'll be up to 10 minutes. There you go.
But yeah, so we're looking forward to working with Die Hard on those. They're super awesome, and we're happy to be able to share their really cool swag with you guys. So enjoy that coupon code. That's DRPG once again.
DRPG. You can also go to several other shows on the network and see that each of them has a coupon code. Each of those coupon codes will work once for 15% off. The last thing I want to say about that is once a month we will be giving away a set of metal dice from DRPG, or from us too, from Die Hard Dice. And our next one we will tell you about as soon as we schedule our next guest, because we're going to do those when we have our guests so we can get our best possible audience when we have our guests. We don't know who is going to be this month, but we are looking very hard. If there's anybody out there that you would like to see on this show as a guest, any personalities out there in the universe, in the I don't know
internet,
the term for
on the internet, on the interwebs,
in our collective community. What's it?
Yeah, sure. Anybody in the RPG community that you think
Zeitgeist, is that the right one?
No. But in the RPG community, if there's anybody you think we should reach out to and talk to, please let us know. We have obviously a very long short list of people that we want to talk to and
we have several people on our list already, but if there's anybody you'd like to see, please let us know. Absolutely. The next thing I want to say is we're working to strengthen our relationship. We have with nerdsmith.org. Obviously that's not what I meant to say. We are with nerdsmith.org, and they have a relationship.
I would say our relationship's very strong with Nerdsmith.
Very strong with them. They have a relationship, and we do as directors of Nerdsmith with World Anvil.
There you go.
We are looking to strengthen our relationship with World Anvil with this show, because we don't have a need necessarily for their services, because they already sponsor Countless Heroes, and that's where we use it the most. But we're looking to strengthen that relationship, and hopefully soon we're talking about putting out a pilot for an expansion of this show, which will be probably a 1-hour segment where we sit down and we work on Countless Heroes, or whatever system game we're working on their world building and stuff within World Anvil, and showing you how to use World Anvil. So we're hoping to put out that pilot sometime in the next week or two. We're just trying to decide when would be a good time to do that. So if you have any ideas on when, weekends, weekdays, what time of the day would work out well for us to put out a little hour thing there. We're going to have it on video on demand, of course, as well. But it's going to be a little companion to this show because we really love World Anvil a lot. You should go take a look at worldanvil.com, or you can see our World Anvil at nerdsmith.org/ch World Anvil, which I miss Fennec. Which we will have all that information.
I put it up.
Hopefully somewhere. Thank you. Perfect.
Well, I typed that real haphazardly, but I got it right. For a moment, I was like, oh God, what did I do? It's fine. So yes, nerdsmith.org/ch World Anvil, and you'll be able to take a look at some of the stuff we're working on. I'm going to just do a really quick shout out to our players for Countless Heroes that Logan and I put a call out to them on our private Discord server, asking them to help us write some more World Anvil articles. And I have a substantially large handful now of articles I was not expecting to have. Awesome. Like of little things, of characters, items, organizations, things that I was like, oh yeah, we haven't done one for that yet. So I am very cool. Grateful to the folks who have sent me cool articles that I'm very looking forward to editing and putting up there. They've done a great job. So thank you guys. A few of you are in the chat right now.
Yes, thank you. Maddie, do you currently own a game store, or have you just owned one in the past? Neither answer is wrong. I didn't mean for it to come out that way. But anyway, thank you guys for that sounded like I was going to wrap up. Thank you guys for listening to our ad break. We have a few other things, but yeah, if you have any ideas about when you want to see us tackle something like that, we'd be glad to do that. We're not going to do it right after this show. This is our 2-hour segment for this, but we could do it like later in the day on Wednesdays before we do Countless Heroes. But we also have another show that's supposed to be launching soon in that time slot, so it would get kind of packed there. Oh, very cool. Where do you own your store? I'd really love to know that. Wait, do I know Maddie? Are you the Maddie that funny. I know? Okay, hold on. We'll have to talk later.
Okay, I love this idea of like, new Twitch, who dis?
Yeah, new Twitch, who dis? Yeah.
All right. I'm super looking forward to the World Anvil segment. I think that will be really fun. If you like us, honestly, the prestidigitation, druidcraft,
don't know that, Maddie.
thaumaturgy, those 3 spells, that flavoring, that feels like a lot of what we might talk about on that World Anvil thing. If we're going to build concepts, you'll get to hear a lot of our world building ideas and our brainstorming for more concrete things, not just let's throw everything at the wall and see how it sounds. It's like, no, we actually are focused on trying to set up a certain tone. I think that'll be cool. Yeah. I'd love to work on Countless Heroes NPCs with you, and the districts of Cinderhaven.
We can do world building at the same time, but showing how we use World Anvil to help that. Because one of the things that Joe from Dear DM, he's a podcast where he interviews DMs, and he's had some pretty amazing guests on there. Keith Baker, Matt Mercer, several others. He's also with the Nerdsmith Network. But he said when he started using it, the idea that I could go on there and I start entering an NPC, and then there's like 50 different fields to fill out, made me think about the NPCs in a way that I hadn't before, and helped me build that way. That is something I'm really looking forward to. My brain does not let me think and type at the same time really well. So that's why Angela and I are going to work together on it. I think I'm
not too bad at doing that.
We're going to do some World Anvil, but we'll be able to chat and stop, and we can take some notes, and one of us can talk while the other one's typing. And I think it'll be good. Plus, we're going to show off World Anvil, which we love very, very much, and we've always wanted to work more and more with them. So.
Yeah, I'm really getting into all the stuff I can do in World Anvil. I'm excited. One of the things we need to talk about, though, is because we have an audience that is, I'm going to say, substantially made up of some of our players and and stuff, I hesitate so much working on my gentle D&D idea on the stream because then they'll just see all my ideas.
I think with something like that, well, that's true. There's that, but I think with something like that with World, we'll get a lot more people that are from World Anvil who are interested in those. There's a series of people who stream World Anvil stuff, and I have a feeling we can make it look really pro and really nice. So.
Oh yeah, and also I'll be reaching out for casting on that. I think I want to branch out a little bit with the gentle D&D idea.
I am looking for. That's one thing I'm looking forward to. Countless Heroes ending is. Then it's a lot of work. Well, I'm going to cut back a lot of the work, but I'm looking forward to it ending because I'm looking forward to branching out to all the amazing new people that we're meeting, and then people we're meeting every day by doing these streams and things. I owned a game store for 2 years, and that did not help me understand how cool of a community there was in the game industry. Now that was back in 2005 to 7, and Maddie probably knows how difficult that time was for game stores. I don't know if it was in Sandusky, at least was here, but from then on, it was very difficult for me to want to get back into games and into the community. And I'm so glad that I did. And thanks to Critical Role and things like that, really be making this community incredible at this point now. Something that I can be very proud to be a part of and actually look forward to and found my tribe. That's all. Mm-hmm. Okay, enough of that. Good God. All right. Moving on. Yeah, Maddie's like, oh yeah. All right, so where are we at? Don't play God, play guide. This one came up from a very simple concept that I've always done, and I never it's just how I've always been. I love sitting back and watching the players play. The two things come out of the players talking a lot. One, they get great opportunities to show off their characters and role play with each other and grow. Two, they come up with some amazing ideas for me to use in the game. So I love just sitting back. The more and more they talk, especially in character, about their theories about what's going on, the more ideas I have for either that moment or a moment later in the campaign. And they get to look back very often and go, I was right. Well, you want to know why you were right? Because you made it. You wrote it. That's why you were right. And it is just a lot of fun to do that. But I never looked at it from a player perspective. And we had a guest on, Kyle Gold from
Tavern Tales?
Tavern Tales and Tavern Tales Jr., which my child is on, or the special episode that's about to be released that my child is a part of. They did a big one-shot with a bunch of child gamers from all over. So it was really
it's super cute.
And it went really well. I've heard a few clips. It's amazing. So that'll be coming out. It's a podcast. Anyway, so from Tavern Tales podcast, Kyle Gold, we had a guest on. He played a character, Jot. Hilarious character. Very fun, goofy, silly. He came up to me after. I said, hey, do you have any feedback? What did you think? You're my first guest I've ever had. I've never had a guest play in any of my games ever in my life. It's always been people I've known really well, and I barely knew you. And he said he had a lot of amazing things to say. And one of the things he pointed out was, you, and I thought he was being critical. He said, we talked for an hour and a half. You didn't say a single thing. And I was like, oh crap, what did I miss? And he goes, no. This is a good thing. This is a compliment. The idea that you let us sit there for an hour and a half and just get to know each other and just talk is amazing. The idea that we could just role play and it was all relevant and stayed in character. You may have given a little direction here and there about some of the things Jot knew, but in overall, you just let us role play. And he says that was a very unique thing that not a lot of people do. And from a player's perspective, it's a great thing. I never realized how much that meant from a player perspective. So that's, and that made me look a lot of, I'm always analyzing my DMing to see how I can change and become better. But that idea that so many DMs out there want to play God, they want to be like, I rule this world, I make things happen. I'm very much not like that. I play guide. I am joint storytelling this story with my players. None of my ideas, I would say less than maybe about half of my ideas about where I think the game is going to go and things don't make it into the game because the players come up with something better. Their story is a better story than my story. It's just, that's the way it is. And I almost always go for the better story. There's a few times when I've made that mistake and I almost always regret making a decision not based on the story. But we can talk more about that another time. But yeah, so that's kind of the idea is that, I just really want to stress upon people that, when you're DMing, you're a guide, you're not God. I don't like this idea that, I can do it. Yes, you can do anything. Congratulations. But, you want to go back to Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility. You have a responsibility to make sure when you have that power to make sure everybody at the table is having fun. That is such a daunting responsibility that I like to spread it around. So I give some of that power to the players, and I just let them hold on to it. And
that can be terrifying.
They may not know it necessarily, but that's the point. You're a guide. Everyone is responsible for writing a good story at a D&D table, at least in my opinion. And it does not necessarily mean that's the right way to play, but I find that is the way that gets the most enjoyment for my players and every table I've been at over what I used to do, which was very much a I am God type role playing, and I would do some pretty horrible things just because I could. It's 20 years ago or so, but that's that. I just like to put that little information out, that little tidbit about what he said there, because if you're a DM and you don't say anything for a while and everyone's staying in character and talking in character,
you're succeeding.
You're doing well.
Yeah.
And as a DM, I thrive on those moments. I would love a session when I walk in, I do the intro, and then I say nothing until the ad break. That would be amazing. I love sessions like that because it means the characters are engaged in what's going on in their lives. And as long as it's entertaining and they're not just going around in circles, it's just so good.
Yeah, no, I'm a big fan. I really dig moments where specifically our characters in Countless, but I really dig the idea where one or two or three characters just enter a scene and you basically just let them run with an improv scene because they have something they need to talk out, or they have something that they need to work out between them. I am a big fan of those scenes. I felt like I've gotten some really lovely role play moments, specifically with Tessa this campaign, because Callie and Syl, I think, have a really interesting dynamic. So I treasure those moments where it's like, no, Logan's just going to step back because we have things to talk about. And yeah, I'm really digging those. We have a lot of our big conversations lately as a group have revolved around what do we do next? But when we get into those ethical conversations, the idea that we can bring together so many characters with different worldviews and different frames of reference and all have to work out a moral issue, that's so impressive that D&D can just conjure those conversations. We've talked about things in our game where I'm just like, oh, that's where this conversation went. That was very unexpected and fascinating. That we've covered a lot of really interesting social political topics and all sorts of stuff that either is veiled in metaphor or is very overt.
Yeah. Absolutely. I didn't have a lot to talk about on that. I just thought that was a good point to kind of put out there, this idea. There's a lot I could expand upon there, but I know we have better topics to get to today. So
it's good to take a step back and acknowledge when things are going right and not necessarily through something you're actively doing in the moment.
Yeah.
It is the things you have set up over the course of the game have brought you to a point where your players are, one, comfortable doing that, and two, you feel like you don't have to hold the reins so tightly. That can be very stressful to be like, I just have to know exactly what's going on and I need to control exactly what's happening. No, if you can let go and you're comfortable with that, you're in a nice place. That seems like I'm very envious of that feeling when I see other DMs doing that. I'm like, oh, that looks relaxed.
From practice and experience. Yeah. But a lot of times I just, especially it gets me because I can't keep a straight face. when the players touch on something that either gives me an idea,
Yeah, you're real bad about it.
Or they touch on something that's the truth of the matter. They finally hit, like they've been struggling with something, and they hit it. I get a big grin on my face, and I can't stop it. And I hate it because I don't have a DM screen to hide behind anymore. I'm on freaking camera. They can't.
You know what we should do for you, Logan? We should get on Sparkle Cam. You should take a completely stoic
deadpan
picture and then make a mask.
Put that
just
on.
make a mask so when you're moving around, it's still there.
That's a great idea.
Or it's you wearing sunglasses.
My poker face. My poker face, yes.
But the point is, you put it on before we start talking, so that it's not like, oh, he did it, he sees something. It's like we just don't know.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's gonna happen one of these days. So so there's that. But I personally would love to get on to the next one because I thought this was very interesting. So Funhouse rules. Next thing we're gonna talk about is critical hits and the issue with 5e critical hits. Whenever I go into a new system, there's always things I want to tweak and change. 5e was no different. And one of the things that I loved about 5e initially was the critical hit roll. I like this idea that you do extra dice of damage, and at low levels, it makes a lot more sense than it does at some of the strange high-level paladin things, but that's okay. The idea is, and there's discussion out there about what constitutes adding into critical hit and what doesn't. If I remember correctly, like Divine Smite is not, I don't think it's supposed to add into critical hits because it's technically happens. It's not a part of the hit. It happens after the hit or something. I don't care. We add it all in together because I love big hits. And there's rules for, there's clarifications about exactly how to do that. If you want to play rules as written, go for it. That's a great way to play. But for me, one of the things that struggled with, and I always struggle with in D&D, is this idea that you're supposed to be doing something amazing in a particular moment, and yet you fall flat because of the dice. And critical hits is one of those moments where it's the only time you get to be extra. It's the only time you get to go beyond the scope of what your character can do on paper. You get to go a little bit farther because of the rules, and sometimes you can roll worse than you did in the previous round with a normal hit. I hated that rule, so I decided I wanted to change it. The first thing that came to mind was doing, how do we put a minimum on it? And the easiest way to do that was to maximize the critical side of the damage. And I really like this because that means bare minimum, you're going to do, if you roll minimum damage on your standard dice, you're still going to do one full max damage on top of that. So you're doing at least a little bit more than you would have, at least 1 to 2 or 3 points more than you could have done maxing a normal hit. So you will always be higher than a critical, will always be better than what you could do normally. Always. It's guaranteed. But the other side of that is we have to limit it because this is a balanced system. So how do we limit that? The other side of that is we limit it because if you roll max, you've just hit the max. If you roll max on every one of the dice, on both sets of dice, there you go. You're at the max. So for me, that's how I ran it. And evidently, I don't know if this is true or not, but somebody said that that Chris Perkins, that's the system he uses in his games is similar to what we do. And so I thought that was kind of interesting. Now, I was reading up on a thread about how house rules, and somebody said that they do max. They just max all the damage all the time. Another person says roll normal damage and then add max critical and max normal damage on top of that. And I was like, wow, that's a big hit. So you're doing complete max critical, max normal, and then rolling normal again. And I didn't see a justification on that one exactly, but that is a big hit, especially if you start adding in things like Divine Smite and things like that. So that's what we do. Of course, there's other systems out there. I used to use a critical hit chart, and critical hit charts add more rolling. So when I was dealing with a campaign with 16 players, I decided I didn't want to do that. They are a lot of fun. Some can be very deadly. There are hundreds of critical hit charts and critical hit decks and critical hit dice out there. We could not possibly hope to review them all. Maybe we will. And show them off. There are some that range, some that even break it down to what type of damage it is. Some that have lingering effects. There's some amazing stuff out there. But you just have to kind of search for that. We'll put some stuff together here and there. So But for the most part, yeah, we just went with something simple that didn't go beyond the maximum, but left you with more than the minimum.
Agreed. I personally like the idea that critical hits also, that when you're talking about the crit tables, I like the idea of there being more substantial consequences for a critical hit. That going into something that might... healing magic kind of puts a wrench in this a little bit, but scars...
Okay, so...
images. Let's talk about... You want to talk about healing magic a little bit?
Let's talk about this, because I'm going to reference back to a previous conversation we just had. I look at this the same as I look at prestidigitation. Cleaning with prestidigitation. There's a certain point where it just doesn't work anymore. I have scars, but they don't hurt. They don't take any of my hit points away. Just because you have a scar doesn't mean vice versa. So the question then becomes, and this goes back to a way previous discussion, when does hit points become physical damage?
Yeah.
To me, that threshold is when you drop to 0. That's the only time it matters. Anything before that can be your luck, it can be your energy, it can be your enthusiasm, it can be a lot of things that are just wearing down on you. But when you get stabbed, actually stabbed, you're like, fuck this shit, I'm out. And you're down. Now, can you get hurt before that and start bleeding before that? Yes, of course you can. But it's not serious. So they may not leave scars with healing magic. It's those serious blows, the ones that take you to 0, that I think should leave scars. Now, that being said, I also use those types of lingering effects very sparingly and in very specific moments. That's why they're so impactful. If I'm going to take somebody's eyesight, if I'm going to take somebody's hit points permanently, if I'm going to leave someone with 3 levels of exhaustion at the end of every combat,
what an odd specific example.
If she gets stuck in 2 combats without any restoration, means she dies. That is serious shit. And those are going to be used very sparingly. I don't want a random crit chart to be deciding that. Now, did I use a random chart? Yes. But it was a very specific moment and something very particular happened, and only happened a particular way. Had you guys had a chance to kill that guy, it would not have happened. And he was not that close. You guys were very close, about 25 hit points away. But you couldn't hit him for most of the combat. So the idea was, I had a very set circumstances that could happen, and you guys prevented it. Or you guys could have prevented it, but you didn't know it was happening either. So that was kind of hard. But you were working towards preventing it anyway, one way or the other. But I like those being more specific moments. Now, I've tried other charts which have minor lingering effects. The problem becomes they introduce so many different new things you need to track. It becomes daunting. Like, sure, you have half your movement because you're limping. Okay. Slows the party down for travel. Now we have to talk about extra travel time. Now we have to talk about... There's just so many more things. It's like, is it really worth it? Sometimes maybe, sometimes maybe not.
Here's something I want to talk to you about then. This is maybe putting a pin in for a later discussion. I'll just put it in the Airtable.
Really bad pantomime.
I'll just put it in our table of contents. So healing... All right, so the HP conversation again. When we're talking about combat and taking hits and that depleting your HP, if we are talking about HP being a slightly more complex topic, not just damage taken, that it's your luck, almost, if not all, expression of taking that HP tends to be categorized in types of damage taken. Do you think that there might be a better way to narrate combat that would express this more nuanced reading of HP? Rather than you take 15 fire damage. Okay, you're burned, right? Like, isn't that damage? The idea that I wonder if there are ways of expressing that HP.
Okay. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm just wondering if I want to talk about that at some point. I want to maybe discuss whether there's a better way to narrate that would express the fact that HP is more nuanced in that definition.
I would agree that is a great discussion. It's a long discussion. For your fire one, I can give you a quick example.
Okay.
I, Logan, used to be into quote unquote science as a child and played a lot with quote unquote fire, and may have burned off several things on my body at different times.
How many eyebrows did you start with, Logan?
If you're sitting there and you're experimenting or in combat and somebody casts a firebolt on you and it bursts against your armor and flares up in your face, that's going to take a little bit of your fight out of you. I know. I've had it happen several times. So the idea is that it didn't hit your skin or your flesh directly because it hit your armor, but it's still a hit. And the fact is that it burst and the fire kind of flared up and you may have singed your eyebrows a little bit. You can smell burning hair. The idea is you're like, I don't really want to be here anymore. You start to lose or start to wear down, or you're maybe you inhaled a little bit of the smoke or the fire itself and you're kind of coughing and it's hard to breathe. It's not technically damage. It's something that will very quickly kind of bring away. But in this system, it is. It's not damage to your body. It's just damage to your psyche, or it's a minor damage to your body that doesn't affect you in a serious way. That is one way to look at it.
Oh, okay. Hold on. So I'm sorry. I will promise I will stop the conversation. Okay. But that feels really fair for like barbarians, for example. You're raging and you're resistant to bludgeoning, slashing, and piercing damage. You're used to melee combat. That's not going to phase you. You're just like, yeah, fucking hell, whatever. You're attacking me. I'm 100% at home and used to this. This is not something that frightens me. This is not something that takes, like, that's not something that activates fun. Yeah, that's not something that activates my fight or flight response, or my flight response is how I respond to it.
Energy. You're still exhausting yourself. You're making yourself tired. And as you do use up that energy, it still uses your hit points as you're going along. You're still like jerking out of the way to dodge. Like Matt Colville has a great example. You know, when you Matthew Colville, sorry, when you when you dodge out of the way and a blow just glances off your armor, that's a hit that loses hit points. You know, that's the idea. There's also times when you kind of just lean into it and you're like, fuck you, yeah, and you just get emboldened by it. You don't lose any hit points. You know, there's hits when you don't even notice, but it's that, oh God, okay, that panic moment that takes a little bit of your hit points away.
And that panic only increases as your HP goes down, because you have players that are like, shit, my HP's low. I need to get out of here because I'm gonna die. Like, that translates to almost a psychological, like, you're getting psyched out because your fight is depleting. Your sense of confidence in your ability to fight has really been reduced by how many blows or how scary this is.
Yeah.
I don't know why it's never felt I don't know why it's never felt like we've talked in that tone. And that's a really beautiful way to talk about it.
Do in the moment, and with years and years of being taught that it is physical damage and it being used as a physical damage concept, even though none of the books ever have described it as such. I don't think. It's always been luck. It's always been your ability to stay in the fight. You know, as we've talked several times in this show, and I can't remember the name of the book. I've got to get that down. But Gary Gygax talks about the history, or somebody writing about Gary Gygax talks about the history of it, and the idea that it came from war games, battleship games specifically, is where it came from. And in battleships, your ship is fine until it's not, and then it is just sunk. So you have hit points, and then when the hit points are gone, you're dead. Yeah. That is where it came from. And so the idea is they translated it to this idea is, again, it's your luck, it's your toughness, it's your ability to stay within the fight. It is something that we have tried to work and discuss and work towards. And I think we're finally hitting on a way to kind of describe it a little bit better here. And I like that. And I saw Matt, sorry, go ahead.
The part of the problem that sort of still builds a wall, is the idea of describing it as damage. It almost makes me feel like instead of damage, you should maybe use the word pain. Like,
well, that's when
like,
they got rid of the word bloodied and went to weary. So I bet we can
Yeah.
come up with a better version of that. And in previous episodes, we talk a little bit about that. We're going to talk about it again here in a second too. But I just want to say, Maddie, I like that idea a lot of taking off the HP from the characters and managing it yourself. If your players trust you, absolutely, and telling them in advance in a session 0, either at the beginning of the campaign or anytime. You can always have a session 0 at any time. You can even have multiple sessions in the campaign. But I think that's a great idea, and it would be an amazing way to handle a smaller game. It puts so much on the DM though already to try to do that, and it would need to be a smaller game that I am not DMing 5 nights a week to have the spoons to be able to do that. Yes,
I have an idea though.
Okay,
how you could do it. And this will just be a preview to anybody who doesn't watch Countless and hasn't heard us talk about this. We did pre-game sessions with Logan when we were trying out for the game. We had multiple characters we were testing out, and there was a particular one-shot that Logan ran in which our characters knew absolutely jack all about ourselves. We were just a character, we had a concept, but we were in a situation in which we woke up somewhere we did not know, and we didn't know anything about ourselves. And we were learning based on our decision-making in the game. We would get class, we would get skills and things like that. And that seems like a situation, that kind of game, in which not understanding what your limits are would make a lot of sense. To have the DM tracking your HP and having to be forced to describe what you're feeling, how you're feeling, having to that both pushes the DM's muscles to have to figure out how to express that you have a third of your HP, how to express that narratively, and have the player catch on to what you're saying. And then after the session, you're like, all right, here are your limits. You've now experienced combat and now understand what you can handle because you knew nothing about yourself before this moment. I think it would be a very powerful one-shot experience. Again, I don't know about doing it every time, but it certainly would be an interesting exercise in, it's like a trust fall for the game group, but then also it reinforces this idea that you know so little about your own capabilities right now.
I like that a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a neat way of interpreting HP.
I love all the places we go. All right, let's get the blast from the past because I worked really hard on this.
Yeah, Logan has notes and notes, and I'm like, well, I guess I'm just going to listen to Logan for a while. I can introduce it, though.
Go for it.
Okay. So, I think this was another Matt Siebert question.
Matthew.
All right, Matthew Siebert said, looking at previous editions of D&D, what do you think are the best elements of those editions, and how could they be incorporated into a 5e campaign? So I only have a little bit of 4e experience, like 2 sessions, and then we stopped playing, and then we played 5e. You have experienced a number of more D&D versions than I have.
Yes, I'd like to put this question on there again in the future, asking specifically about other systems outside of D&D and what we can incorporate into D&D from them, because we incorporate stuff all the time. So I'm going to go ahead and run through the list here, and we can discuss anything you'd like to discuss. I'm going to go back to AD&D or second edition. In second edition, one of the things I loved about the books was the amount of in-depth information you could find on any particular monster. They seem to have a lot more direct and specific information set in the world. And I understand why it's changed, and I think it's better now. But it was nice for me as a new player to get in and be like, this is exactly what this is. Here it is. It's very specific. This is how it works. This is what it does. And a lot of that flavor of that is reserved now because we want to be able to fit into multiple worlds, which I think is a better way of doing it. But as a new player, it was something I liked and that I miss sometimes when I go and look at a monster description. I go, okay, this is kind of vague. Yeah, I get it. I got to fit into my own world and I got to figure out where it's going to work and stuff. But when I go to another system, I go to Eberron or something, it's hard sometimes to figure out where this monster fits in Eberron. or where this fits in Forgotten Realms, I then go back to previous editions where they've answered that question and try to figure that out, because I don't have any clue where it might fit in. So that's something that I liked about that edition. The other thing that I divisive to a T, in second edition, you got a binder, a 3-ring binder for your monster manual, and you got pamphlets, 3 punched, nice, glossy pages that you then could put into this thing. Well, I don't think they were glossy, actually, now I think about it. That you then put into it, and you could reorganize it. And that means you could have every monster they ever released in 1 or 2 binders, and you could add them as you go. You no longer had to sit there and try to find the right book for the right monster. I missed that. Now, D&D Beyond has resolved that.
I was going to say.
Things like that. We have a lot better systems now. I probably would not use them, but I, up until D&D Beyond came out, really missed that. A lot of the wikis out there and things, they don't keep up with the errata. They don't keep up with changes. So it's hard to trust them all the time, but I really loved the 3-ring binders. It was what reminded me of D&D so much.
I'd started making custom folders and binders for myself, because I had the books, but then I also had the PDFs, so I could print the pages I needed and then 3-punched them and put them in my binder. So it's like I have my class, my race, my spell lists, all that stuff that I need is right here. I don't need to go searching in the book for them.
And if you were one of the people that somehow legally obtained those PDFs that were never created, you could print out the pages. And that was something you could do. I would hope that you would have bought the books as well. We do not condone piracy.
Yeah, I had the book.
But yes, but you could print out the pages you want to put them in your own binder. I've done that with PDFs I may have found somewhere. Again, we don't condone it. Buy the books. But I also pay for D&D Beyond. I pay for the books. I also pay for everything on Roll20. So I pay for everything 3 times. I think I'm covered. But now D&D Beyond, I can just print that page up and I can put that in the binder. And I do that all the time with my home games or when I'm traveling. Okay, I used to do that all the time. I guess I can't say that I haven't played a home game in a year. But it would have nice to have that 3-ring binder just pop open. Okay, everything's organized and things. That harkens back. Moving on to 3rd edition and 3.5, one of the best things I think of that came out of 3rd edition is the setting of Tolus. PTOLUS was the setting that I just blanked. Monty Cook created to sandbox and use as the personal world for the creation of the rules of 3rd edition. And it is an amazing little city that is its own book. I mean, the book is 3 inches thick. It was incredible. It came with this huge poster map. Actually, it was a banner. It was vinyl banner material, and it was an incredible setting. And we played through it. You understand? Just really, really rich and a lot of things going on. And I love the description that was written in one of the books. It said, the players were walking down the street and a troll burst out of the front window of a tavern, starts running down the street, and 3 adventurers jump out and start running after him. And one of the players who's new to the game starts freaking out, like, we gotta go get him, we gotta go him. And the player's like, no, don't worry. This kind of crap happens all the time here. And he said that was the moment when he knew that player had grasped Tolus. It is a crazy, wacky, over-the-top, crazy stuff is happening all the time in this city type of world, and I really liked what that came out of. If you've never played in Tolus, never looked at it, you should. 3rd edition also, you've got a lot more feats. I like that. I like the balance, this idea that there were a lot of feats, more customization options, which was great for min-maxers. But also that is good and bad, as I put tons of options. Too many options, actually, which was part of the downfall of 3.5, of the fact that if you count third-party material, there was probably 400 different books that game stores could purchase within the first year or 2 of the game license becoming available, the open game license. It became very ridiculous very quickly and it sold. I probably stocked all of it at one point because people would be willing to buy anything, even no matter how bad it was. Even, there's a particular wiki out there, a dandy wiki, I call it, out there that I hesitate to give the full name of because I really don't like it, because it feels like all of those splat books in one place. It's just like, here is just anything we can think of. We're not worried about balance of the rules or anything. We haven't really thought this through. We just think it would be cool. I created this and put it on this wiki so I could use it in my home game, even because my DM allows anything you can find online, and I want to break my game. That's how it feels. And there was a lot of that being kind of churned out at the time. But also that meant that there were a ton of options, a ton of great flavor options. People were constantly making new things with new ideas. And there was a lot to pull from. So that was both good and bad. 4th edition, the best thing I think that came out of 4th edition was Bloodied. This idea that at some point you can kind of identify a point. Because before you had that, you had people going, how many hit points are you at? I hate that question. It's a stupid question. Sorry, there's no stupid questions. I really get frustrated when somebody looks at somebody else and asks what their meta stat is. It is difficult for me. The only time that's appropriate is if you're trying to compare initiatives and you need to figure out the meta initiative order. Asking for your character to know in character how many hit points you're at is ridiculous. But it makes sense to me.
There are a couple of instances though where that's required. The game has crushed you to have to ask that question. For example, as someone who played a life cleric for a really long time, one of your channel divinities is you can bring people up to half their hit points.
You can ask them what that is. You should just tell them.
But you only have a pool of points. So you have to say, all right, I have 100 points to give out. Who can I take to half? Who can I not risk that? There's math that has to happen in that meta sense because they wrote that ability like that, which is a bit like, I'd almost be like, you can lift 3 people to half and that's it. And you don't get a point thing. You just get a number of people, or you can bring up people to half.
Isn't
equal
there a
to
limited range?
There's a range, but if you're in a group, like if you're all mushed together,
so I would change
you still have to know.
To just, because you know what, I remember that and told us that we had to deal with that. I think I would just change that to, you can bring up anybody in your party to half. Not extra NPCs, not extra whatever. It is the people in your party to half.
Those allies that are
an equal number to that, like 5, maybe you're right, 5 people. I think that would make it go a lot faster and not worry too much about that.
Yeah.
Look at us house rolling. I think that's a great idea. So Bloodied, but we changed Bloodied. I don't like the connotation of Bloodied. It means that you're getting hit. We just had that HP conversation. So we changed it to weary. You look weary. You look tired, not exhausted, because exhaustion's the thing, but you look weary. You're being drained. You're like, okay, I'm really I'm struggling to go on anymore. I'm starting to let my guard down a little bit more. Something is going to get through. Something's going to hit me, and I'm not going to get back up.
Yeah.
And the point about weary is a little different. Bloodied was half your HP, period. For me, weary is dependent on the character. There are some wizards out there that after taking 2 hit points might turn on weary. Might be like, oh man, that's it for me. No, thank you.
2 hit points are like 1/10 of my HP. I can't.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that might be half at some point.
Yeah.
And then there's going to be people like certain barbarians. They're like, I'm never weary. I'm never going to get there. I'm never going to show the world my weakness. And that decision I leave completely up to the player, and they can turn it on anytime they want. It's a little heart that beats on our game. They can turn it on anytime they want, and they can change it every time. They can be like, okay, this time in this combat, this is really hitting me hard. I'm at half hit points. I see other people down. I'm getting frustrated. I'm getting tired. I'm getting exhausted. I'm getting weary. Everybody else is up, but I'm the only one at 10% hit points. Screw it. Everybody else is up. We're fine. I know healing's coming in. I'm pushing through this. So that way people get to make that decision on their own, and then the healers can then react to that. So that is how we took Bloodied and twisted it and changed it up to kind of make it what I think is a more appropriate system for what it was intended to be, and with how HP are intended to be.
Yeah. Jay brought up a really good point, and the idea that it's under player control. As barbarians, I think we both have this, that our weary threshold is very different depending on if we're raging or not. If we're in a rage, we know that we're more resilient. It's taking the mechanic and turning it into narrative. We are raging. We know we can take more hits. We know that we are more resilient, or at least we think we're more resilient, and so we will have a much higher threshold for taking damage. It will be like Jay said, for him, it's single digits is when Oshin will go weary as a raging. Sometimes Syl, mine barbarian, won't. Sometimes she just won't. And I think Mike might be one of the people that might never do it. I don't know. We have players, let me tell you, weary condition really lets you play the martyr when you want to. Where it's like, I literally don't want my healer to bother with me. I'm not as important, or it is more important that I stay in the fight than have my healer rush over here and get into danger. So I don't want them to see I'm sweating. And you find that little reserve of poker face.
Yes, exactly.
I love the weary. That's like one of my favorite things we've come up with, and I will likely always use it from like here to eternity. I'm married to the idea of weary.
Yes, absolutely. Samurai, you were just talking real quick. I'm gonna go back a little bit too about photocopies and stuff and realizing you're stuck in the past. I remember midnight runs to Kinko's because Kinko's open 24 hours. Midnight run to Kinko's to go and take our Vampire the Masquerade books and photocopy onto cardstock and stuff. We would spend 30, 40, 50 bucks at a time just getting stacks of character sheets photocopied straight out of the book. And then when they came out with the player's guide, the player's handbook, and they were also 4-page character sheet, we realized our budget shot through the roof. We did some crazy things. We just loved all the new papers. Every time they get a new paper shipment, we printed onto transparencies one time. It was really, really cute, really, really fun. We had a lot of fun doing that. But yes, now with PDFs, I'll order some cardstock for myself if I need it, but that's about it. What happened?
I'm stealing something from Zach for Gentle D&D. HP is now called spoons.
Oh, that's a neat idea.
How many spoons do you have?
That's a good idea.
As a reference for anybody who is not a fervent zealot of spoon theory, the idea is, this can be for anybody. This is not just people with mental health considerations, but in life, day to day, the theory goes you have X amount of energy to expend on activities or emotional labor or just dealing with life. And the metaphor takes it as like a spoon drawer. You have a limited number of spoons, and certain tasks take more spoons than others. Certain tasks require you to expend more energy in your day. And some days you're going to have activities or things that you have to do that take a lot of your spoons, and you will be out of spoons before the end of the day, and you will be exhausted and unable to handle what's going on. And you need to rest. You need to, for lack of just to continue the metaphor, you need to put those spoons in the dishwasher, and you have to refresh the spoon drawer, which is resting, self-care, getting sleep, that sort of stuff. And then you spend the next day with however many spoons you start out with. And so Zach in chat proposes that the amount of energy and luck and determination that you have over the course of a day sounds like a very good analog to HP and spoons. So I think I'm going to start using spoon theory for my Gentle D&D game to even further separate the idea that your HP is just your damage taken. Oh man, still has 95 spoons. That's a lot of spoons.
That's a lot of spoons. So we changed HP to spoons and spoons to spell slots.
Well, no, I said that in there, that if you use the spell slot metaphor, everything gets fucked up.
Yeah.
So as D&D players, we have occasionally used spoon metaphor to be spell slots, where I think the metaphor still works pretty darn well, that sometimes you got to use a higher spell slot for things, and sometimes you only have to use a cantrip. It's just, it depends on how big the task is. It is a very good, and obviously we're getting a little off topic, but it's a very good way of articulating to people how you're feeling about a very it's a very esoteric conversation about your mental fortitude over the course of a day. So I think it's a very interesting, very useful metric to express to people how much you can take today.
Yeah. So the last couple of things on the list before we have to get out of here. 4th edition had one of the big things I really loved was how good they were at reflavoring things. But they took it way too far. They took it way too far. And unfortunately, this was all supposed to lead into the next conversation, but we're just not going to have time. But we're talking about balance because they made a perfectly balanced game. You got up to the higher levels, everybody felt balanced. Everybody felt like they could do the same amount of damage and the same amount of healing and the same amount of everything because it was basically the same powers, just with different flavor. And so in my mind, they took it just way too far. It became a game all about reflavoring. You could even look and see these are the exact same rolls with the exact same stats. Maybe you use intelligence and I use strength, but still everything else here is the same. At the same level, they're just flavored differently. And that harkens back to Mutants and Masterminds or things like that. I don't work well in an environment like that. Spider-Man just DM'd me. Okay. I don't work well in an environment like that. That just threw me completely. I don't work well in an environment like that because I like to see those differences, and we're going to talk next week probably about the balance issue. We'll come back to that.
Yeah, so we'll use that as our intro for that conversation.
And then they different appeal. 4th edition appealed to a completely different audience than 3.5. And that was a really, really good thing. It got a lot of MMORPG players to take a look at D&D seriously. They came over, they saw familiarity enough that they could sit down. They got, I've got my cast bar. I can do this, then this, then this. Next turn it regenerates. I can do this and this. They got this ability to just go into it going, this makes sense to me. They got hooked, and they're playing 5th edition now. That was a great thing. And last, the good and the bad, like I said, the balance. Balance has a tendency to make everyone feel equal in the end and happy and fluffy, except that it takes away one big thing for me, and that's moments. You don't have those moments where one person outshines the entire party, which is a good thing, as long as everyone gets those moments throughout the campaign. And so that is my last point there. And we have 1 minute to go. So what do you want to
do? Do we want to... I don't know. It's been wonderful talking to everybody. We can outro. That sounds good. So as we said earlier, I'm currently in video editing mode. I am hoping to finish our first Discover RPG video today, and we will have that out this week. And
we'll have links to it all over the place. Yeah. You'll be able to find those for the first week exclusively on the Die Hard Dice blog. And then after that, they will be on our YouTube from there. And we're going to be hopefully putting out bi-weekly right now, I think is our goal. Hopefully eventually ramping up to weekly. But bi-weekly or twice a month content over there for now. The first one being this week. So hopefully that is our goal right now. We want to make sure that we get a little bit ahead before we start promising weekly.
And figuring out our format and stuff. We're going to be probably experimenting
we're still learning and stuff. I'd also like to put a shout out to my wonderful wife who got me an amazing Nerdsmith ring. She actually technically proposed again to me, which was kind of cute. It was very cute. It was adorable. But she got me this beautiful Nerdsmith ring. I'll go ahead and share it. So I just wanted to say shout out to my wonderful.
Is that like engraved?
It's basically I think it's laser etched and
nice.
Antiqued. But yeah, it's a forged ring. Basically, it was created by a smith. She has photos of it being created and stuff.
That's awesome.
Yeah, she found a guy on Etsy that does it.
That's
really
cute.
Really nice guy. It was and that was my anniversary gift this year. Hers is still coming, but our anniversary is not for a month and a half. Neither one of us can ever wait to give gifts.
I can't either. I'm really bad about it. I'm bad about it because then when holidays roll around, I didn't get anything because no, I gave you a gift 3 months ago, apropos of nothing. Isn't that enough? But no, that's incredibly sweet. Tessa, you are the cleric of my heart and the lady of Logan's heart. We both love you very much in very different ways.
Probably. Alrighty, guys. Well, thank you very much. We really appreciate it. We're going to go ahead and let you go.
And you can catch Countless Heroes tonight
Heck yeah.
at 7 p.m. PST for our 114th episode. And
man.
there's usually enough to keep people entertained, even if they haven't seen all the previous stuff. We'll see you next week, and hopefully sometime we'll announce this little World Anvil thing. We still want to talk with World Anvil a little bit.
Yeah, we're gonna plan it up. We might do. I would propose that maybe
put a pilot together and just
we do a couple of
people are interested.
Yeah, let's do a couple test streams, see how people like it, and we'll make it more organized.
Look for those sometime this week. We'll fit them in someday this week. All right, guys. Thank you so much, and goodbye.
Be good to each other.